Sponsored by Taylor Freelance, Rainier Ballistics, Hodgson Powders, and JPL Precision.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Power Factor. I thought I'd take a few more minutes here and answer some more viewer email questions, so let's get into it. Got a message here, a question from GunFundZS, and says, what are your reasons for the intended migration to Fiocchi Primers, just cost or something else? You're right on one of them. Cost is or was a major issue. Cost and I should say availability. I ended up buying about 10,000 or so Fiocchi Primers, I'm going to say about 6 to 9 months ago, when primers, shotgun primers, or primers in general were very difficult to get your hands on. I was beginning to get really low. I'd been using Winchester and Federal primers up until that time, and my supplier quantity of those were getting low, and not knowing what was going to happen with the whole entire, reloading component industry. I decided that when these things became available at a decent price, I probably should jump on them. Of course, hindsight is 2020, because today primers are more common on the market. Right now, checking base prices roughly, and I'm going to use one example here. Fiocchi primers are probably about $130 or so. For 5,000, where Federals or Winchesters are probably somewhere around 150 or so, maybe a little bit more than that for the Winchesters, but about 150 or so for the Federals. However, you may see them on sale. In fact, I just checked today, or actually yesterday, at Graphs, where I usually buy my primers from, and they had Federals on sale for 133. So for $3 more from what I paid back in the day, or when it was for the Fiocchis's, I could have now bought Federals, which if I had my choices, I would much rather have bought Federals, but here we are. So it's primarily cost and availability. Now the one downside to the Fiocchi primers is the problem is that those are a European primer. They're slightly larger in diameter than the American primers, which means two things. One, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to seat them in the holes. And two, those holes are now going to be dedicated to European size primer because they're going to be reamed out to be a larger size. You try to put an American primer in there and it's probably going to fall out. So I'm not really sure exactly yet how I'm going to deal with this. I've got a couple thousand more Federals to go before I switch to Fiocchi's. And what I may end up doing is basically just like, I'm going to say quarantining a batch of holes and running them and keep cycling those over and over and over, and maybe keep away from my once fired holes that I have, just in case I don't like running the Fiocchi's for whatever reason. Maybe I can sell off the other 5,000 to John or something. He likes them, or at least he used to, until he started having piercing problems with his blazer. But it's when I decided to actually go and get the Fiocchi's, John's been running Fiocchi's forever. And he's been running through his Berettas, and I asked him, have you ever had a problem with gun, misfire or anything because of the primer? And he said, no, never once. So I thought, okay, well, if that's the case, it runs in a Beretta, it'll run in my Beretta. So I had at least confidence there in running the Fiocchi's. But at any rate, I'll probably switch over to them, quarantine some quantity of my holes, reload them, keep running those ones through and through. And if I'm happy with it, maybe I'll start mixing in the rest of my primers, and I'll completely switch to Fiocchi's down the road. And I've seen Fiocchi's on sale too, so the price I'm quoting at 130 is a normal everyday price at Graphs. I think I've seen them down for the 115, 119 range, something like that. So anyway, that's primarily the reason why I'm running the Fiocchi primers, and no other good reason. So. So Ron here asks, I am new to shotgun games and have greatly enjoyed your podcast on the subject. In a couple episodes, you mentioned that you switched from 1 1/8 ounce shells to 7/8. That's actually true. I actually went from 1 1/8 down to 1 down to 7/8. When you made the switch, did you change your chokes to compensate for fewer pellets? Yes, I did. I tightened the chokes up for really two reasons. One, like you're saying, to compensate for fewer pellets. Basically, the idea is, with 7/8 of an ounce versus guys that are shooting 1 1/8 ounce, the center of the pattern, for the most part, should be consistent, because what happens is if you look at pellet dynamics, it's the air that actually causes the pellets to start spreading. And with fewer pellets, obviously you're going to get more holes in your pattern compared to a load with more pellets. So what I wanted to do is kind of tighten my pattern up to a certain degree to compensate for the fewer pellets. In shotgun speak, in terms of sporting clays, I usually always run an IC and a mod. So IC in the lower barrel and a mod in the upper barrel. When I'm shooting trap, 16-yard trap, I'm usually running a modified choke. When I shoot continental, I'm running actually sometimes a modified or an improved modified. And when I'm shooting skeet, I shoot skeet. The other reason for running a little bit tighter choke is I like to be a little more precise, if you will, in my shooting. I like to know where I am at on the bird, whether I'm squared up to it, or if I'm taking the front edge off, or the top, or the back, or whatever, because I think, if you run a tighter pattern, it will tell you more where you are hitting the bird, as opposed to an open pattern where the bird just kind of goes into chunks. You get big, you'll hit it and maybe get like, 4 or 5 pieces, as opposed to really dusting it. So I feel that with a tighter choke, you may notice that you're ripping the nose of the bird off, or the tail of the bird off, or whatever. And if you're reading your breaks and recalling where you were on the bird, your bird-barrel relationship, not looking at the barrels, but being perfectly aware of where it is, it can help you improve on your next shot. So that's primarily the reason why, again, I'm running a tighter choke, is to compensate for the fewer pellets, but also to improve my ability to read and hit targets and become a better shotgunner. So let's take one more question here. This is one from Daniel W. It says, "Hey guys, I've discovered the videos. They are great. Question on barrel length. You both shoot, both being John and myself, both shoot 32-inch guns. How did you make the choice between 30 and 32? Everybody has different opinions." Well, yes, they do. For me, the 32-inch just seemed to balance well and swing well. The difference between 30 and 32 in terms ballistically is negligible. You're not going to see that much higher velocity of a 32, so that's not an issue. Generally speaking, and again, this is a general guideline, if you're 5'8" and less, probably a 30-inch gun would be better for you. If you're 6'2" and above, 32, maybe 34 if you're really tall, would be good for you. It really gets into how the gun balances in your hands, how the gun feels in your hands. If you feel like the gun is unwieldy, or it's nose heavy or something like that, it's probably an indication that the barrels are too long, or you've got too much weight up front. If you feel that it's whippy, or the weight's in the back, then you may benefit from more weight up front. The nice thing about longer barrels is that it tends to make the gun be smoother in your swing, obviously because you have more mass out there. And it also, to a certain degree, can help you improve with a longer sight plane. And again, you're not looking at the gun, but you peripherally feel, an extension of yourself, or extension of the gun out there toward the bird, and you can just kind of feel that your ability to point at it is easier with the longer barrels. So I think those are the two main reasons, or I'll call it 3 main reasons, for longer barrels are longer sight plane. Gun may balance better, and it may swing better in your hands, but you really need to go out and see for yourself what it feels like. And again, a 30-inch gun in one brand may feel completely different than a 30-inch gun in another brand. Berettas in the past have been usually known to be a little bit nose heavy. So a 32-inch Beretta, I'm sorry, did I say Beretta? I meant Browning. Browning in the past has been known to be somewhat nose heavy, so a 32-inch Browning may really feel, nose heavy compared to a 30. So if you grab, let's say, a 30-inch Browning and a 30-inch Beretta, you may find just between the two that they feel completely different in terms of just swing and muzzle weight, so to speak. My Browning Satori hunting gun has 28-inch barrels and feels considerably nose heavy compared to my 32-inch Beretta. The Beretta to me just balances perfectly in my hands, and I have no trouble manipulating the 32. So again, if you're over 6'2", go 32. If you're under 5'8", go 30. If you're somewhere in between there, you just kind of figure it out on your own of what works best for you. So, okay, until then, break them all. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of us, and we will be glad to answer them for you. So, thanks for watching.
Hey Power Factor fans, I am Rick, and we're back for another exciting episode of Power Factor. I have just returned from the monthly club match at the Paul Bunyan Club down in Puyallup, Washington, and a little interesting thing happened at the range today. First, I got up this morning, looked outside, weather forecast was for beautiful sun, pack up my range bag, get to the range, sign up, go to the safety area to put on my gear, and I can't quite get my gun in the holster. And I don't know if you can see it there, but the problem is that this holster is my Safariland model 568 for a Smith & Wesson large frame revolver. And of course I wasn't shooting the large frame revolver today, I did that last weekend. But for some reason, instead of grabbing the 567 for my high power, I grabbed the 568 for the revolver, and luckily it sort of fit in there. The trigger guard's covered good enough, but looking back, maybe that was a sign I should have just gone home. I had a weird malfunction. Now, I've had my high power for 15 years. I don't shoot it a whole lot, maybe 2 or 3 matches a year, except in those years when I've shot it at our sanctioned match, in which case I generally have shot it all summer, which means I shoot it 3 or 4 or 5 matches instead of just 2 or 3. But I had a malfunction today that I've never seen before, never heard of it before, never experienced it before, but it kind of, I don't want to say it ruined my day, but it was just so interesting that I thought I'd tell you about it. So here's the high power. It hasn't, sort of like a 1911, in that it hasn't really changed since day one. There's not much different about it from when it was introduced in 1935. There's been some improvements to the sights and whatnot, but it hasn't really changed. And when I do my slide lock reloads, I do the slingshot method of dropping the slide. So I get my mag in, drop the slide like this, and get the gun back in action. So what happened today is, if you look closely here, we've got a notch here in the back of the slide for the thumb safety to lock into, the famous slide lock safety. It just means that the slide will not move when the safety is on. Then forward of that, we've got the notch right here. I think you can see that in the light. That is the takedown notch. And the way that works is you pull the slide back and lock the thumb safety into that notch, and that locates the slide properly to remove the slide stop. So what happened to me today is empty mag. I'm at slide lock. Let me get this set up right. I'm at slide lock. Put in my mag. I go to drop the slide, and it doesn't drop. And let me set it up here in secret so you can see what happened. So I'm doing this. Well, what has happened is somehow I managed to push the safety up into the takedown notch while I was doing my slide lock reload. So pressing on the slide stop isn't dropping the slide, because now the magazine, it's just like I'm thinking to myself, what the heck is going on, you know? And of course, I've got my single lens focus going on, and so my nearsightedness is preventing me really from seeing what's going on. So I just kind of stop. It's one of those deals where you're furiously trying to get the gun back into action, and I just kind of go, okay, I've spent 5 or 6 seconds on this now, racking and tapping, and nothing's going on. So let's just see what it is that's going on. And I look and I see, oh, the safety is holding the slide open. So I just drop the safety, slide goes back into battery, and away I go. And it probably cost me 10 seconds maybe on a 10-second stage, So it's just one of those weird things. One of the points that I've made in the past about competition shooting is until you start manipulating your gun controls, the safety, the slide stop, the mag release, with a sense of urgency, you're never really going to know whether the gun is especially friendly or not to those manipulations. I remember when I shot my first USPSA match in 1997, shooting an old GI Colt 1911A1 that had belonged to my dad, and I'd been shooting that gun since I was 9 years old or 11 years old, and I'd never had an issue disengaging the grip safety. But at my first USPSA match, I failed to disengage it on 3 of the 6 draws that I had at the match that day. And so it was just one of those deals like, what is up with this? I'd never had any issues with it before. But when I started trying to do it quickly, getting that draw and getting that gun out, I wasn't getting the grip safety depressed. And I think it was the same thing today. I'm trying to get that mag in the gun in a hurry. And I think my thumb probably pressed up on the safety. At the same time, my right hand is trying to get the slide back to release it. And I was able to get that safety up in the takedown notch. And again, never seen it before. Maybe I'll never see it again. But it was a very strange occurrence. Cost me about 10 seconds. There you go. Don't ever do that. That'll screw you up.